What kind of games?
Okay.
Well, we played games that we made up ourselves because the television hadn't come along yet. The radio, there was one or two radios in town when we was growing up. And I remember in 1937, we went down to Farmer's Hardware, and that was the only radio in town. And we heard Max Smelling beat up on Joe Louis. And that was the only radios that was around then. And then we got crystal sets, as they call crystal sets. And you had to operate a battery, and then we had one you had to bring in and take the battery out of the truck and bring it in the house to play on that and to run the battery down. Then Dad had trouble driving. So electrically wise, we didn't have it much. And the games that we played was, well, I can remember Fox and Geese, which is an ancient game, but it has to do with hiding and finding, and but most of the time when you with your neighbors, we had in our neighborhood there we had about 15, 18 young folks, and we'd all congregate around Walter Sanders' farm because he had 3 daughters. One of the reasons.
Good reason.
That's three good reasons right there. And then some other daughters came from other farms, and it's a lot more fun playing Fox and Geese if you add that element there, especially for the older boys. The younger boys, we didn't pay much attention to all that. But that was the games that we played, and I remember one time we was over there playing. We had to get permission to go, so we asked Dad, can we go over to Walter Sanders's and play Fox and Geese? And he said, well, you've got to be back by dark. And he says, and that means dark. And so here, about half a dozen of us, Bill and June and Everett and Herb and myself, I don't think John was old enough to go then. We went over there and we was playing and we was having a great time. And we was up in the hayloft and down around the cow barn and whatever. And nobody paid any attention to what the sun was doing, but it had already gone down. And we looked up and saw that it was dark, and we looked around at each other, and then we looked across the field there, and there come Dad making about 5 feet of the step. And we knew that we was in trouble. So he got there, he said, you know what dark is? And of course nobody answered, because you knew you were going to get your end kicked anyway. So he proceeded to correct us all the way home. So that was the way the other games you played. And then we played, and I remember another time we got in trouble playing. We had a cane field out in front of the house. And a cane, we broadcast it, which means it doesn't go in rows. It's just, it just grows. And it might be growing about 2 inches apart or 3 inches apart, something like that, all over the field. Well, it got up to about maybe 5 feet. And us kids, we'd made trails through it, running through it. And we'd hide and make trails across trails. And Dad come in, he saw all of his good cane gone to waste there. And he raised Cain. And so we got corrected there, we'll say. But games, well, there was no television, there was no computerized games. There was, matter of fact, the recreation we had, of course, was Blanche and Lacey's Victrola, which we weren't allowed to play unless they was in the house.
Were there any board games?
There was, we played checkers. And then there was another game that we played with the same board, Parcheesi. And then there was another game that we played with the checkers. But I can't think of the name of it.
Did you play chess?
We played chess, yeah. But we didn't have any chess pieces. And you had to have various. And
that makes it tough, doesn't it?
Makes it tough to make that. then we had, when we made, we'd go out to the barn and where the cattle had, we'd throw in there corn, corn shocks of corn, which gave you the full stalk of corn. Well, if the cattle didn't trample them up much, why you could cut them out and make bodies for horses or cattle, and then you took the edges of it, which was sharp, and you could stick on a head or stick the tail on, and you could make various figures for the barnyard, which was another interesting, well, it's something to do, you know. And then we went back on the hills, and we'd fox hunt, and then we'd hunt for possums and various things. We had different things that we did. Just everybody had to work off their energy, and I remember we went back on the back on the hills. This was after we moved to town. We went back in behind Landers's place, which is what is now is US 60 goes out over Radio Hill. And we went in behind Radio Hill there, and Collins's place, and we had about 4 pairs of brothers there. There was Everett and I, and then there's McClay's brothers, and Landers brothers, and Bruce Porter, and his, well, he had a brother done. Anyways, a guy run with him. And anyway, we went out and we was possum hunting, and we had 2 flashlights. And when we'd tree a possum, we'd shine the flashlight on, and then we'd shake him down, catch him, put him in a sack, and because they sulled once they hit the ground, and they like they was dead, and you put them in a sack, and they might not move maybe for 15, 20 minutes. And we'd carry him along, and we'd go get another one and shake him out and put him in. And finally we got way turned around to where we didn't know which way we was. And one of the older ones said, well, we're lost. And so they decided that the older ones would go one direction and the younger ones would go in another direction. Said, now when you get up top of the hill, if you can see the lights of town, why, holler and we'll, you yodeled what you did. You yodeled in. You yodeled from hilltop to hilltop. And so we started out and they started out. The only thing was that they stopped and followed us because they knew exactly where they were, and we didn't. So we roamed around till it just got to our legs about to drop off. We were so tired. And we sat down a couple of times, and then after we sat down a few times, why, they've identified themselves as being real close to us. Says, come on, let's go out this way. Maybe we can find home this way. They knew exactly where they were. And they just wandered around and lost us. Now, that was a game that wasn't that funny.
No, I'd say not. Well,
it was for them, but it wasn't for us.
I'd say that is funny though.
Yeah.
Well, what about toys? Can you remember what your favorite toy was and why you liked having it?
Favorite toy? We got, at Christmas time, we would get a jacket, which would be a piece of clothing, and generally it was a jacket or maybe a shoes, and then we would get a cap pistol. Now, a cap pistol was the toy that we got, and the cap pistol would cost maybe 25 cents, and the caps, you'd get 5 rolls of caps for a nickel. So that was our toy situation there, and our Christmas presents. But we look forward to them just like everybody does. And but that's about. Cap pistols were of such nature that they had when you pulled the trigger, it fed a cap up, and then when the hammer came down, why, it hit on this live cap, and it'd make a noise, pop a noise like it was a pistol going off. But that was about all it was. It was not that great. But then we had made our own toys. We took tire inner tube, and we'd cut rings around it and put it around say a 1 by 3, the one before, something like that. And we'd put 2 bands around it, and we put a stick on the end, and that would bind it together. Then we'd take another rubber band and cut it up short and put it under the end of where the stick was, and then stretch it out over the end. And if you put enough tension on it, why, you could shoot a rubber band, say 15, 20 feet. And close up, why, that was kind of aggravating. But we made our own guns too when we didn't have any.
You said the cap gun, you got it at Christmas, and how long did it last?
Cap pistol, it lasts maybe a week, and then if we didn't break it over somebody's head, why, it would just eventually fall apart. It wasn't that much of a deal.
Were birthdays a day that similar to how they are now, or?
Well, you didn't celebrate as much because you didn't have the facilities, and you didn't have the money, really. The economy of the day was different, in as much as there was very little money. But you never noticed that you didn't have that much money because nobody else did either. None of your ones that you run with was overflowing with money, and so it wasn't. Well, I've seen times when some people that have money and some people that don't have money are 2 different classifications of people. That's unfortunate, but it happens. And when you all got an equal amount, which is little, why, you have a tendency to get along better.
Well, what were some of the? You've mentioned some of the games you played, and I was just wondering what our. Well, we're almost done with this tape too. Give me 1 second. We may be done with it, but I think we've got one more question. We're going to cut this and edit it, but the question was, what was your favorite thing to do for fun when you were growing up?
Well, we had actually don't sound much like fun. We fought a lot, but our neighborhood had a boss of the neighborhood, and then a couple of streets over somebody else, and then up they had a neighborhood that was actually the neighborhood bully. And so when one neighborhood would invade the other one, why, they'd all come out and they'd fight with their fists or hands or kick or whatever until one of them run the other one off. They run him out of his neighborhood. And that was one of the ways. And sometimes there was just knockdown and drag out fights. I remember one time it was Halloween. I think I was maybe 12 or 13. And there's a fellow lived down Sandy named Johnson that he came into town, and of course I was a bully of my block, and he came into town, and we was walking up and down the street, and they was throwing firecrackers and this, that, and the other. And some people actually did to dress up for the Halloween, and some just tried to tear their costumes off. It was all kinds of people, and we was one of them kind, which we won't go into.
A rogue.
We had
A rogue.
A rogue. We was a rogue. Well, we got down the street, and I had on a tam, what they call it. It's kind of a French thing that fit down over your head, and so. And I was the boss of my street or alley, and this guy, Johnson, he lived up there down Sandy, and Wendy Johnson.
I think we may be done. I see that light flashing. Let me see. For now, I mean, we got to put a new tape in, I think.
This is a bad story anyway.
Okay. No, it's still, yeah, we're in the last minute, so we're going to pause it for now.